Hello and welcome to Task Force Bighorn and another installment of Jupiter Training for Leaders, our Leadership Professional Development, LPD, that we are walking through as part of Jupiter Training. A few quick disclaimers before we jump into it. The views presented are not from the DoD and are mine alone, and they are not reflective of what they believe. We're using fair use doctrine, talking about limited purposes for using The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, and also the educational context, thinking of how we're using this as an LPD, and so being mindful within that leadership development context and educational items. So let's get into it. Jupiter Training for Leaders. We're talking about our first book, which is Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I specifically chose this book as a way to reset, so to speak, after deployment. So since we've come back from deployment, there's been a number of things that we've done well and a number of things we've done differently. The main issues that we had on deployment, a number of them were avoidable had we used the infinite versus finite analysis for how we are looking at approaching the military and our deployment and a number of other things. In the 169, we're on time, on target every time. Let's not forget that. Bluff is, are we process-oriented or people-oriented when we're looking at our problem solving? Looking at the Infinite Game mindset, a key lesson learned from our last deployment is that we failed to show how we specifically care about the individual and how we're wanting that individual to grow into their future and how they can be the best version as a soldier of themselves. So we're looking at the long-term, also infinite, way of how we're looking at the leadership development model, but also how we are actually crafting, creating, allowing leaders to be the best leader they can as a soldier within that context. We're having 3 discussion points for each book as a way to anchor us into what we're actually looking at and understanding. And it's also a way to come back to those basic principles. And that way, it's not too hard to keep those 3 in mind as we go through these books. Quick reminder too, at the bottom of some of these slides, we're going to have an italicized question. That's for us to take back to our unit, to the people that we are leading, and specifically talk about how we would address it, or just for self-reflection. Also, as we go through these books and the LPD, part of what we're doing is an actual call and response, a discussion, some sort of self-reflection, evaluation during those sessions. So this is going to be much more singular focused in a different format, since I'll be walking us through the basic makeup of each different book that we read. So just something to be mindful of. If when we do this in person, it's going to have a much different feel. I haven't found a good way to get beyond that disjointed nature of it from presenting it in this fashion. However, I'm always happy to come to talk to people about what's going on. Top 3 discussion points. Advance the higher cause, protect soldiers, civilians, and the world, generate leaders to continue success. As we go through all of this, there's a few key things, and we'll see these again at the end, that I want us all to keep in mind. Specifically toward Bighorn, how do we cultivate an infinite mindset in Bighorn? How do we define a big hairy ass goal versus an infinite goal? How do we create an environment in which people can work to their natural best? Do we support that environment? How do we build trust with team members? How do we create a culture of trust specifically within Bighorn? How do we evaluate problems to lead effectively and not simply lead through structure? Who are our worthy rivals? How will we cultivate the courage to lead in our own life and organization? Again, this is to be taken beyond the military. When we go home at night, take the uniform off, we don't take that leadership mentality off. So how do we apply the leadership mentality through the Infinite Game in everything we do? As we walk through this, here's 7 high-level takeaways straight from the book. Victory versus fulfillment, the Infinite Game, and then how do organizations achieve that level for the Infinite Game. Finite thinking, a real struggle for most organizations, and we'll walk through that. Finite and infinite games, what are they? How do we know we're playing one? How do we choose to interact and play with those different ones? Leaders often have a need for self-reflecting within their mindset. How do we actually do that self-reflection? Business, this is a business book, but there are a number of military aspects in it as well by the author. So as an army, We are playing an infinite game. And number 7, the finite versus the infinite leadership and that mindset. So let's jump into victory versus fulfillment. So the path to victory is finite. The path to fulfillment is infinite. And living a life of fulfillment is living as if there is no finish line. Going back all the way to the ancient times, when there was a victor, somebody came and they achieved something. They were victorious on the battlefield. They were victorious in their diplomatic relations. There was some sort of victory. That victory is specifically talking about a one-time thing in a way that they were better than everyone else by some sort of metric. Here we're talking about fulfillment. Fulfillment is an ongoing concept. It's something that we are continually trying to achieve. And even if we do have a finish line in sight, that finish line will continue to be pushed further. We're living that life on that journey. So here at the bottom in italics, something to think about, talk with your soldiers about, do some self-reflection. How are we building the mindset to look beyond annual training, those metrics, and how those metrics are the sole source for the culminating event? How are we building our own mindset to look beyond just something is done, we're victorious, we have our victory meal after the culminating event at annual training? How are we getting that mindset to look beyond that? Let's move to our second discussion point, infinite thinking. Infinite thinking has been utilized throughout history, and it happens when large groups of people come together, there's a common cause, we collaborate. There's no end in sight to that collaboration. A number of examples are space exploration, scientific advancement, societal development. It's something that is continuous, and it is something that we have a common cause around, and we don't know when, if, or should it ever be ending. So infinite thinking isn't easy though, because our default mindset as humans is to think of a finite thinking mindset. We tend to see the world in terms of short-term wins and losses. Now, this is very true within the organizational structure of a business, the wins and losses, the quarterly earnings report. This is also true in the military. We're talking about the battles that we win. If somebody's in combat, how are they winning that? And then going on to the next one. Somebody achieves a victory in terms of winning a board, so then they're advanced, they're promoted, they're moved. We're not really great at that infinite thinking. We are very good at humans as at finite thinking. The takeaway question from infinite thinking is, what common cause do I think we unite with under Bighorn? How am I distributing that message across Bighorn? So let's continue talking about finite thinking as an issue for most organizations. A number of issues. Arbitrary projections, cutthroat work environments, unethical behavior, shareholder supremacy, a few of the buzzwords that are found within the book. So it's very easy to be focused on that short-term gain. I have achieved something, I will do this other thing to achieve something else, we're doing great. But the whole point is thinking beyond that short-term versus long-term. The whole point is great leaders think in how they are set up within that organization. They think how that organization is going to succeed beyond that individual's tenure, that individual's lifetime. And it's how are we making things better for everyone involved? There is no end in sight. Not in a bad way, but in a good way. Great leaders are thinking beyond those simplistic goals to get to the long term, to the infinite term. Takeaway question for finite thinking as an issue for most of us. If asked, how would my soldiers state I view goals? Do my soldiers understand the small tasks we achieve are contributing to a higher purpose? So let's talk about a finite versus infinite game. Finite games are played, known players, fixed rules. There's an agreed upon objective. There's a specific end when that objective is reached. And a sports contest is the best example of this. Or a video game. Great examples of this. Infinite games are played by unknown players sometimes. There's no exact or agreed upon rules within this specific game we're playing. And there's no time horizon. It's an infinite timer horizon. There is no metric or objective to be achieved that will end the game. No finish line. The objective is to continue to play as long as possible and to also perpetuate the game as we are playing. An example of this is education. As humans, we are continually educating ourselves. We're learning more. We are improving and trying to be better in the future. So one note here, especially for us within the military context, we do have rules. There are conventions. There are laws that govern us. I'm not saying we should break the rules. I am saying players can break the rules if they want. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. But they will have to subject themselves to the consequences, and they will have to be willing to live with the consequences if they break the rules. But here there isn't a prohibition to breaking the rules. Now, look at that within a sports contest. If we look at that specifically within a penalty in hockey, somebody breaks the rules, there's a consequence. And the game continues to play because the rule is broken and that consequence is served. The rules are fixed and it's a finite game. Question here is, why am I playing the game? Do I want to keep playing? Do I want to keep others engaged to perpetuate the continuous game? Now, before we move on to how we change our mindset, I want to just insert a small vignette here. So for anyone that has seen the movie Ready Player One, bear with me as a second as I explain it. For anyone that has not seen Ready Player One, there is a point in the movie where the creator of this virtual universe is giving away all of the rights to that universe. Players have to go through a number of objectives and achieve those in order to be awarded everything within this universe. So the creator sets up these objectives. However, at the end, everyone is trying to win at this final objective. A number of people go through it and they win the game within the objective, but they don't actually win the objective. At the end, one player understands that this game being played is actually a game that was created, a video game that was created a number of years ago. And there's a secret level within that video game. There's no victory. It's a secret level to continue playing the game. So somebody could play forever. The person that wins these objectives and is given the power and authority over all of these creations, he wins the objectives and the final achievement by going into this secret world. He continues to play and perpetuate the game. And that is the objective or achievement within that specific realm. The whole point of this video game is to continue playing, and the whole ability to win this objective, get this achievement, is to unlock a level that allows somebody to play forever because they want to keep playing. So that's just an example of perpetuating the infinite game. And do we actually want to, or are we so consumed with that specific achievement? So again, the questions are, why am I playing the game? Do I want to keep playing? Do I want to keep others engaged to perpetuate the continuous game? Most of the games we play are, in fact, infinite games. They require the open mindset. We approach them as games with a finite mindset and try to win, which is incorrect. However, over time, when we approach it with that incorrect mindset, our trust is eroded, our cooperation goes away, our innovation is hindered. So here's the key. We don't get to choose whether the game is infinite or finite. Somewhat of a misnomer, because a finite game, I can go engage in a hockey game, I can go play football, I can do something that has a finite end to it. But we don't get to choose all of the games. We do get to choose, however, if we want to join, and if we do play, what our mindset is. So we need the infinite mindset within the infinite game. So we're more likely to survive and thrive if we play for the game we are in. Specifically, if we're joining a finite game, we need a finite mindset. Conversely, if we join an infinite game, we need an infinite mindset. So whatever mindset we're choosing to play, we have to be honest with ourselves and those around us. That affects our organization. It affects our execution at all levels. It affects everything we're doing. So the question is, what game am I playing, and how is my mindset impacting my ability to play for the long term? Field artillery is an infinite game. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We can't win the game of security. There's no end in sight. It's a perpetuating game. It's never complete, and there is never a winner within the game. Players can join and leave as they desire. People can take off the uniform, go do something else, and they can leave the game. but that game is still continuing. There's no fixed rules that everyone has agreed upon. Yes, we talked about it earlier. There are laws. Those laws can vary between nations. We have Geneva Conventions, the law of war, law of armed conflict. There's a number of things. But those can vary and they can be broken if players are willing to face the consequences. So again, let's think about it within that mindset. If a player wants to face the consequences, they can. All they have to do is break the rule, be willing to suffer, and move on. So just something else to think about within this context. Talking about field artillery as an infinite game, we're looking at it within somewhat of a business context. This is a business book. However, war, security, world unrest, those are all infinite games. We see players drop out when they run out of the will to continue or the resources necessary to keep playing. So let's talk about will for a second. Will is an intangible thing. Will is hard to measure, and it's the sum of all human elements, and it contributes to the overall health of that specific organization. Will is the feeling that people have when they come to work, and it's something money can't buy. It's intrinsic and generated by that specific organizational culture. Within Bighorn, will is something that is intangible when soldiers show up. Soldiers show up for whatever reasons. Some of them are monetary, some are resource driven, some are the will to show up. So how in Bighorn do we create that intangible? How do we allow soldiers to have that will to continue going? So it's opposite than resources, right? Resources are tangible. You can measure them. It's all of the financial elements that contribute to the organization. However, they're all outside sources. The question within field artillery as an infinite game is, how do I create an environment in which my people can be their best? Said within our context, how do I create an environment where soldiers can be their best? So let's look at the leadership for finite and infinite. First, we're going to go with finite, then we'll switch to infinite. Finite leadership, there's a bias toward prioritizing resources over will. So we just talked about will and resources. So within finite leadership, there's a bias prioritizing resources. They're prioritized in the short term and the long term. The key here with the resources is when they're not available, layoffs ensue. There's no resources to continue with the future growth. A number of issues happen. Finite-minded leaders also play to end the game and make every plan and every move with a goal to win. So the whole purpose of the finite leader is to win the game. And every single decision that finite leader is making is to win. The decisions are made primarily for the benefit of themselves and by asking, what is the best for me? Now, those finite-minded players also hate surprises. They're fearful of change. The reason is disruption, change, surprises are things that cannot be predicted, that individual cannot control, and those items threaten the chance of winning. If we're talking to leaders and a leader reacts to some threat, to some change, to some surprise, to some disruption in a very negative way immediately without any hesitation, that might be a finite-minded leader. So keep that in mind as you're interacting with leaders. Question here is, how did I last react to a change in IDT plans? Am I able to adapt when higher units tell me I need to do more? Let's look at the infinite leaders. Infinite leaders have a bias toward prioritizing will over resources. We talked about that intangible. Infinite leaders are prioritizing that intangible. The reason people show up that can't be bought has to be cultivated. It has to be part of that organization. Instead of layoffs, infinite leaders explore other ways to save money, and the key here is asking the group to join in that group suffering. Sometimes as leaders, we say, hey, we all got to show up an extra hour each day this week so that somebody can keep their job. Or, hey, we're going to have to do 2 extra hours of fire guard tonight because we need to achieve this mission. The key is the group is sharing in that suffering to distribute it. We're not looking at growth as an investment to save money. We're looking at growth as an investment to safeguard our future. So infinite leaders look at ways to safeguard what is going to be happening in the future. And hey, if something bad happens, something terrible happens, or we lose somebody, we're going to be okay because we've created that safeguard. And that is the growth mindset. We ensure that our employees, customers, shareholders all remain inspired to continue to contribute to the organization. Set in the military context, we work to ensure all of our subordinates, all of the civilians we interact with, everyone supplying us with what we need, any type of theater security cooperation, any type of working with a host nation, all of those are something that we have in our mind. And we're ensuring that those contacts, those relationships are contributing to the organization and that they remain there so that those individuals want to continue to support the organization. A number of people want to leave organizations better than they found them, mostly financial or self-motivated means. The infinite leader wants to leave an organization better than they found it because the game will continue to be played and it's a self-perpetuating game. That infinite leader wants to leave the organization better for future generations so that they can improve upon it as well. We lead to keep leading. That's the infinite mindset. We're focusing on what is best for the team, what is best for others, what is best for the organization. The reward for a leader is to continue leading. The question here is, how am I bettering the organization for those around me? So now we've walked through a number of the high-level concepts. I want to switch gears here and talk about the principles to the infinite mindset. Again, these are all found within the book, so we're going to walk through them here. Also, traditionally within this, we would have call and response, discussions, self-reflection, but based on the format we're doing this in, it's hard to actually have those interactions. So again, happy to come and talk to anybody about this, having an in-person discussion. The 5 principles we're going to talk about are advance a just cause, build trusting teams, study our worthy rivals, prepare for the existential flexibility that will occur, and also, lastly, demonstrate the courage to lead. So let's talk about advancing a just cause. Definition: a just cause is a vision of a future state that is so appealing that people are willing to make sacrifices in order to help advance toward that vision. Again, we're not talking about winning because winning is a temporary boost to our own self-confidence. We're talking about a just cause that is perpetuated and people are motivated because of that higher purpose. The just cause does not need continuous winning to be successful. The just cause is that future state that is appealing to people. The question here, italics at the bottom, is, could I win and also support a just cause simultaneously? So within this mindset, we're talking about building a trusting team. There's been a ton of research, a number of psychological studies into how to create a winning team. Now, if we're looking at the Special Forces community, we're looking at a number of organizations across the spectrum. There's been so many resources devoted to it. Here we're focusing on a diagram used by the Navy SEALs, slightly modified. So the Navy SEALs have a quadrant, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. However, I have added a high trust in the middle. So there's actually 3. So when we're on a trusting team, we're able to express our vulnerabilities. We feel safe in saying, hey, I made a mistake. I done messed up. I need some help. We're also safe about being honest for our own shortfalls in performance. And we also feel safe and take responsibility for our own behavior and ask for help. That's very contrary to a number of times within the military when failure is seen as the ultimate devastating blow. A safe team, a trusting team, a team that I want to be on personally, is one where I can make a mistake, I can ask for help, I can raise my hand and say, I think there's a better way to do this. I can raise my hand and say, teammates, I need help. I'm suffering right now and I don't know what to do. If we're not on a trusting team, we feel the opposite. If we're not on a trusting team, the moment we mess up, we're berated. The moment we fail, everyone says, well, you're off the team. You're not doing what you should. So when the SEAL teams are looking at future members, and when the Navy SEALs use who they want to be on a team, the top left is a high performance, low trust. And that's a very toxic environment. High performance, low trust is not where we want to be. However, it's green because it's high performance. Contrast that with the absolute worst place to be, which is bottom left in red, low performance, low trust. Not only is that team not performing, nobody trusts the team. Now let's look at the top right, also in green. That's high performance and high trust. This is where we want to be as a team. We want to have a high-performing team. We want to have a high trust in that team. Now, bottom right, also in red, is high trust but low performance. Again, we're trusting that team, but they're just not performing. The yellow one in the middle that is added is high trust, neutral performance. High trust, neutral performance. I'd want to be on that team, on that high trust, neutral performance team, because it means I trust my team. We might not be the highest performing. Might not be the best. We can get there, though, because that trust is there. So high performance, high trust, and high trust, neutral performance are both teams that we want to be on. Again, the trust is the important part within that. So let's talk about studying our worthy rivals. Part of the competitive mindset is a winning mindset, which also leads to the finite mindset. So if we're tracking it, it goes competition to winning to finite. If we shift that mindset and we look at an infinite game, we're not looking at everyone else's competition and rivals and people to be beaten. We're looking at worthy rivals that can help us, ourselves, become even better. So there's the saying that greatness pulls people to the higher level. Here we're looking at other teams, we're looking at other individuals, and we're looking at our rivals so that we can be better. And here we want our rivals to be their best. We want to go into competition against our rivals when they are performing their best. And whatever outcome, we are happy because it means we can elevate our game even higher based on what happens. This is difficult within the military context. We have the joint forces rotations. We have when we go to different schools, we are in competition against others. We have wars that are fought. We have combat that happens. So it's a little difficult. But we're also talking about peer, near peer. All of those phrases and keywords are here within our competition. And we want our competition to help elevate us. Competition can be amongst ourselves, with each other, elevating us to a higher level. And it can also be external to the organization. If they're performing at a high level, we want to perform against them so that we can make ourselves better. So, question here is there someone or some specific organization that continually pushes me to excel because of their own elevated purpose? So let's look at preparing for the existential flexibility. We talked a lot previously about the finite mindset, where finite leaders don't like change, they don't like disruption, surprises are something they fear. So let's talk about preparing for that flexibility. If we're an infinite-minded leader, we're expecting that surprise. We're prepared to be transformed by that surprise. We're embracing the freedom to play an open game, and we are also looking at the possibilities to keep us in that self-perpetuating game. We want to keep the game going. So, our existential flexibility is the ability to adapt, change, and overcome. That ability to adapt, change, and overcome isn't anything new. How many times have we heard in the military, always flexible, semper gumby, as some might say, or be ready to change? We deal with change a lot in the military. And that is part of being an infinite leader. Having that infinite mindset so that we're ready for those possibilities so that we can continue playing. Question here is, how does the existential flexibility compare to a midlife crisis? Let's talk about the final one, demonstrating the courage to lead. Again, the infinite game for leadership is more leadership. It's a self-perpetuating game. So if we're a leader, we want to continue being a leader. So we're facing a lot of pressure too. Let's talk about how we can actually be courageous, because it takes courage to adopt an infinite mindset. The key here is the pressure we face today to maintain a finite mindset is overwhelming. So part of that courage is to cast off that finite mindset and be an infinite-minded leader. We have that within our own organization. We've had that on numerous prior deployments. Everything is so fixed to be a finite issue. Everything is with a finite solution. So the courage is to be an infinite leader, to actually change our mindset. People's careers are tied to how well they perform in the infinite game. True for business, true for the military, true for government organizations. People tie their career to how well they're doing. But that career should not be tied to that finite game, especially when the game is infinite. So the courage to adopt that infinite mindset is what we're talking about. Be courageous, take that step. That's what we're talking about. So within the infinite game, do we have the courage as leaders to actually say, whoa, wait a minute, what game am I playing? Do I want to play this game? How can I choose my mindset appropriately to play the game? And then go from there. The question here is, what courage do others see me exhibit? Do my goals align with the next 3 generations? I'm not talking about the next 3 generations in terms of children growing up to be adults. For us, I'm talking about the next 3 generations of people taking over for me. I'm training the person to take my job. So the 3 generations that will take my job over or replace me in a deployment when we do our RIPTOA, or that leader that's going to be in front of the formation as a commander or first sergeant or command sergeant major. What courage do others see me exhibit? Do my goals align with the next 3 generations? We've talked about a number of things today, so I want to go back and revisit the guided discussion roadmap. Again, these are things that if you want to talk about more, just let me know. I would be happy to discuss any more. If anyone wants to do in-person discussion, please let me know. I'll make myself available. So we saw these in the beginning. Let's just recap them here for the discussion roadmap. How do we cultivate an infinite mindset within Bighorn? As our battery, how are we cultivating that infinite mindset? How are we allowing others to have that courage to have that infinite mindset? Number 2, how do we define a big hairy ass goal versus an infinite goal? Number 3, how do we create an environment in which soldiers can work to their natural best? And do we support that environment? Within Bighorn, are we supporting that environment so soldiers can be their natural best? Number 4, how do we build trust among team members? Number 5, how do we create a culture of trust within Bighorn? I want Bighorn to be a culture of trust. When people come to Bighorn, it has to be earned. They earn our trust. So how do we actually take that step? Number 6, how do we evaluate problems to lead effectively and not lead through structure? Again, how do we have that infinite mindset leading for the person to be their best, not leading through structure? 7, who are our worthy rivals? Peers, near peers, other batteries, other battalions? Lastly, how will we cultivate the courage to lead? How will me specifically, cultivate the courage to lead? How is that realized within my own life and organization? How am I realizing that courage to lead within Bighorn as the organization and within my own life? Because again, we're always leaders. Even when we get out of the military, we're still going to be a leader. Take that uniform off, we're still a leader. Never get away from that. So how do we play the game? How do we have that courage to realize in our own life? Again, thank you so much for your time and attention to this. I appreciate everybody taking the courageous step to be a better leader. Appreciate everyone in Bighorn trying to make us a better organization. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please reach out and let me know. If anyone wants to talk further about anything. If anyone needs a copy to the Infinite Game, please reach out and let me know. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And let's continue to make Bighorn a better unit, a better culture, and let's be successful as we continue to make leaders for the future. Destined to climb.